The rain hammered the windshield like fists demanding entry. James Collins tightened his grip on the steering wheel, eyes locked on the winding road cutting through hill country darkness. Tuesday, 11:47 p.m. The radio crackled with warnings about flash flooding, but he'd made this drive 100 times, knew every bend, every dip where water pooled after storms. 42 years old, and he still drove like he was racing towards something instead of away from it. The call had come in 20 minutes ago. County dispatch needed someone to check the water gauges near Cypress Creek. Rising levels meant downstream ranches could flood by morning. He'd left Sarah with Mrs. Henderson next door, promised he'd be back before she woke. 7 years old, and she still slept with the light on, still asked why Mommy never came home from the hospital. 4 years wasn't long enough to stop missing someone who'd been the center of your world. Lightning split the sky ahead, illuminating the road for half a heartbeat. That's when he saw it. Metal twisted against oak, white paint gleaming through rain and smoke. An SUV folded around a tree trunk 50 yards down the embankment, flames licking at the hood despite the downpour. James hit the brakes, felt the truck fishtail before catching traction. Training took over before thought could. He was out the door, boots sinking into mud, lungs pulling in air thick with gasoline and burning rubber. The slope fought him. Every step forward slid back too. Rain turned the earth into a slick enemy, but he'd pulled people from burning buildings when the world was collapsing around them. This was just another Tuesday, another chance to do what he'd failed to do the night Sarah Chen died in his arms. The driver's door was crushed inward, window shattered. Inside, a woman slumped against the steering wheel, blood streaking her temple. Her eyes fluttered open as he reached through jagged gums, found her pulse. Weak, but there. She tried to speak, lips moving without sound. "Don't!" he said, working at the door handle. Jammed. The crowbar was still in his truck. "Stay still, I'm getting you out." Her hand found his wrist, fingers cold and desperate. The pressure surprised him, strength in that grip that didn't match the broken body. She pulled him closer, mouth near his ear. "You saved my life." The words came out wet, trembling. "So now, this body is yours." James froze. The world narrowed to those words, to the rain pounding his back, to the heat building behind them both. He didn't understand, couldn't process the meaning, but there wasn't time for questions. The fire had found the fuel line. "Ma'am, I need you to let go." She did. Her hand fell away as consciousness left her again. He ran for the crowbar, half sliding back up the embankment. The truck's toolbox opened on the third try, fingers numb from cold and adrenaline. Back down the slope, crowbar in hand, leverage against metal that didn't want to bend. The door screamed as it gave way, and then she was falling toward him. Dead weight that he caught and lifted. She couldn't have weighed more than 120 pounds soaked through, but carrying her up that hill felt like dragging the past 4 years behind him. The SUV exploded as he crested the embankment. Heat rolled over them, singeing the air, turning rain into steam. He kept moving, didn't look back until they reached his truck. Inside the cab, he laid her across the back seat, stripped off his jacket to press against the head wound. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Alive. He'd kept someone alive. The drive to his ranch took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Every bump in the road made her groan, made him wince. He should have gone to the hospital, but the nearest ER was 40 miles and she was bleeding in ways that wouldn't wait. His place had supplies, had quiet, had walls between the world and whatever came next. Decisions made in crisis always felt right until morning asked you to explain them. Ranger met them at the door, the old shepherd's tail low and cautious. The dog had a sense for trouble, for when the world brought darkness into their small bubble of safety. James carried the woman inside, laid her on the couch Sarah called Daddy's napping spot. The quilt Emily had sewn 6 months before the diagnosis went over her. Purple fabric with white stars that Sarah said looked like Mommy's smile. The woman's eyes opened while he was cleaning the wound. Green, he noticed, sharp even through pain and shock. She stared at him like she was cataloging details, building a file in her head. "Where am I?" "Safe." He pressed gauze to her temple, felt her flinch. "You were in an accident. Car's gone, I pulled you out." "The fire?" "Yeah. Do you remember what happened?" Her jaw tightened. Something shifted behind those eyes, fear giving way to calculation. She sat up too fast, swayed, and he caught her shoulders. "Easy, you might have a concussion." "I need to see the news." She looked around the cabin, taking in the worn furniture, the child's drawings taped to the refrigerator, the photo of Emily on the mantel. "Do you have a TV?" "Radio." He pointed to the counter. "But you need to stay down. You're in shock." She ignored him, stood on shaking legs, and made it 3 steps before her knees gave out. He caught her again, guided her back to the couch with hands that remembered how Emily had felt when the chemo stole her strength. This woman was a stranger, but fragility looked the same on everyone. The radio was already on, local news cycling through weather warnings and traffic updates. James turned up the volume. The woman leaned forward, every muscle tense. "Reports of a single vehicle accident on County Road 17. The vehicle, registered to Catherine Wade, CEO of Wade Energy, was found fully engulfed in flames. Authorities have not yet confirmed whether anyone was inside, but sources close to the family suggest Ms. Wade was traveling alone tonight. We'll update you as more information becomes available." Catherine Wade. The name landed like a punch. James knew that name. Everyone in Texas knew that name. Wade Energy had been in the news for months, something about water rights and expansion into new markets. He'd seen her face on magazine covers at the grocery store, always serious, always professional, and she was sitting on his couch, bleeding through his best gauze. She turned to look at him, and whatever mask she'd been wearing cracked. "They think I'm dead." "Are you?" "I should be." Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face. "That's what he wanted, what he planned." "Who?" "Richard Blake, my CFO. He tried to kill me." The words hung in the air between them, too big for the small cabin, too heavy for midnight confessions. James sat back, trying to process what she was telling him. Attempted murder, corporate conspiracy, a dead CEO who wasn't dead sitting in his living room while his daughter slept at the neighbor's house. "You need to call the police." "And tell them what? That my trusted executive tried to murder me? He'll have lawyers, alibis, a dozen witnesses who'll swear he was somewhere else." "I have burns and a head wound and no proof of anything." "You have the accident. The car was tampered with, I'm sure, but by the time anyone investigates, the evidence will be gone. Richard doesn't make mistakes. He's been planning this for months, maybe longer." James stood, paced to the window. Rain still fell, softer now, the storm moving east toward Austin. "Why would he want you dead?" Catherine's laugh was bitter, sharp enough to cut. "Because I found out what he's been doing. Water rights theft. 50 ranchers across 3 counties all sold their groundwater access to Wade Energy. Except they didn't. Richard forged the contracts, used shell companies to hide the transactions, $2.3 billion in illegal acquisitions, and I didn't know until last week. $2 billion? Give or take. Enough to destroy the company if it goes public, enough to send him to prison, so instead of facing consequences, he decided to erase the problem." She said it so calmly, like she was discussing quarterly earnings instead of her own murder. James turned back to face her, searching for something in her expression that matched the gravity of what she'd just revealed. Fear, anger, anything human. But Catherine Wade wore her composure like armor, even bleeding and hunted. "You can't stay here," he said finally. "If this Richard thinks you're dead, he'll come looking when he doesn't find a body." "I know. So what's your plan?" "I don't have one, not yet." She met his eyes, and for the first time he saw something crack in that perfect facade. Exhaustion, desperation. "I just need a few hours to think, to figure out who I can trust." "Can't trust me. Don't know me. You pulled me out of a burning car. That's more than most people would do. That's just being human." You'd be surprised how rare that is in my world. The door creaked open. James spun, heart hammering, but it was just Mrs. Henderson with Sarah tucked against her shoulder. The girl was still in her pajamas, clutching the stuffed rabbit Emily had given her for her 3rd birthday. "I'm sorry, James. She woke up asking for you. Wouldn't settle until I brought her over." "It's fine, Mrs. H. Thank you." The older woman's eyes found Catherine on the couch, took in the blood and the bandages and the expensive clothes that didn't belong in a ranch house. Her expression stayed carefully neutral. "Everything all right?" "Yeah, just helping someone who had car trouble." Mrs. Henderson nodded, the kind of nod that said she didn't believe him but wouldn't push. She'd been Emily's friend, had held Sarah when James couldn't, had taught him how to braid hair and pack lunches and be both parents at once. If anyone deserved the truth, it was her. But the truth felt too dangerous to share. Sarah lifted her head from Mrs. Henderson's shoulder, rubbed her eyes, and looked at Catherine. 7 years old, with her mother's dark curls and her father's careful way of watching the world. She studied the stranger on the couch for a long moment, then turned to James. "Daddy, who's the sad lady?" The question caught him off guard, Catherine too, from the way she stiffened. James crossed to take Sarah from Mrs. Henderson, held his daughter close enough to feel her heartbeat against his chest. "Just someone who needs help, baby girl. Like the people you used to save before?" "Something like that." Sarah looked at Catherine again, those wise eyes that saw too much. "She has sad eyes like you, Daddy." James felt his throat tighten. Out of the mouths of children came truths adults spent years learning to hide. He kissed Sarah's forehead, breathed in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Let's get you back to bed, okay? Can I say goodnight to the sad lady first?" Before he could answer, Sarah wriggled free and walked to the couch. Catherine watched her approach with something close to alarm, like she'd never been near a child before. Sarah stopped 2 feet away, studying her with the same careful attention she gave to her drawings. "Are you gonna be okay?" Catherine blinked, opened her mouth, closed it, finally managed. "I think so." "Good, 'cause Daddy's really good at helping people. He saved Mama lots of times when she was sick. He can save you too." The silence that followed was its own kind of wound. James felt it open inside him, the old grief finding new purchase. Sarah didn't understand what she'd said, didn't know that all his saving hadn't been enough when it mattered most. But Catherine understood. He could see it in the way her expression softened, walls coming down just enough to let sympathy through. "I'm sure he can," Catherine said quietly. "Thank you for telling me." Sarah smiled, gap-toothed and bright. "You're welcome. Good night, sad lady." She ran back to James, who scooped her up and nodded to Mrs. Henderson. "I'll walk you both out." At the door, Mrs. Henderson touched his arm. "James, be careful, whatever this is." "I will. And if you need anything, I know where to find you." He carried Sarah across the yard to Mrs. Henderson's porch, waited while the older woman unlocked her door. Inside, he tucked Sarah into the guest bed, pulled the covers up to her chin. "The sad lady's gonna stay at our house? Maybe just for tonight. She needs us, Daddy." "I can tell." "How can you tell?" Sarah considered the question with the seriousness she gave to everything important. "Her eyes, they look like yours did after Mama, like she lost something big and doesn't know how to find it." James kissed her forehead again, marveling at this small person who saw the world in ways he'd forgotten. "Get some sleep, baby girl. I'll see you in the morning." "Love you, Daddy. Love you too. More than the sky. More than the stars," she finished, their ritual since she was 3. Back at the cabin, Catherine hadn't moved. She sat on the couch with her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. Ranger had settled near her feet, the old dog's protective instincts kicking in even for a stranger. She looked smaller now, more human, less like a CEO and more like someone who'd survived something terrible. James locked the door behind him, checked the windows, Old habits from his firefighting days, always knowing the exits, always having a plan. He poured 2 glasses of water from the tap, handed one to Catherine. Your daughter seems very perceptive. She sees things other people miss, always has. And her mother? Died 4 years ago. Breast cancer, stage 4 by the time they found it. Catherine's fingers tightened around the glass. I'm sorry. Me too. He sat in the chair across from her, left space between them that felt necessary. Look, I don't know you. Don't know your situation beyond what you've told me. But if someone's trying to kill you, you can't stay here. My daughter comes home tomorrow. I won't put her in danger. I understand. I'll leave in the morning. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Somewhere Richard won't think to look. You got friends? Family? She laughed again, that same bitter sound. I have employees. I have a board of directors. I have a calendar full of people who need things from me. But friends? People I trust? She shook her head. No, I spent the last 5 years building a company. I forgot to build a life. James knew that feeling, the way work could fill every empty space grief left behind. After Emily died, he'd buried himself in water systems analysis, spent 16-hour days studying aquifer reports and drought patterns, anything to avoid going home to a house that echoed with absence. What about the police, FBI? Someone who can investigate this Richard? With what evidence? He's too smart to leave traces, and by the time I convince anyone to take this seriously, he'll have destroyed whatever proof exists. She set the glass down, met his eyes. I need time to think, to plan, and I need somewhere safe to do it. This isn't that place. Then where is? The question hung between them. James thought about his small world, the people he trusted. Not many left after Emily, Mrs. Henderson, his old captain from the fire department, and there's a pastor, Robert Hayes, used to be a prosecutor before he found God and whiskey in equal measure. If anyone can help figure out your legal options, it's him. A pastor? Don't let the collar fool you. Robert's seen more dirt than most lawyers, and he knows how to keep his mouth shut. Catherine studied him for a long moment. Why are you helping me? Because you were dying in a ditch and I was close enough to do something about it. That's not a reason, that's a reflex. Maybe. But my daughter thinks you need us. And she's usually right about these things. Something shifted in Catherine's expression, walls cracking just enough to show the person underneath. The sad lady, she said softly. Is that really what she sees? Sarah doesn't lie, doesn't know how yet. Must be nice having someone in your life who still believes in truth. James stood, moved to the window. Dawn was still hours away, but he could feel time pressing down. Feel the weight of decisions that couldn't be unmade. Outside, Ranger's ears perked up. The dog stared toward the fence line, body tense. What is it? Catherine asked. James grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer, stepped onto the porch. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and heavy. He swept the beam across the yard, found nothing at first. Then the light caught something small and metallic stuck to the fence post, blinking red. Faint but steady. His blood went cold. He jumped off the porch, crossed the yard in 6 strides. The device was the size of a quarter, magnetic backing pressed against the metal post. A tracker. GPS, probably. Military grade from the look of it. Someone had been here. Someone knew exactly where Catherine was. James ripped the tracker free, crushed it under his boot heel. The red light died, but the damage was done. They'd been broadcasting for hours, giving whoever was hunting Catherine a perfect target. He ran back inside. Catherine stood near the couch, reading his expression. What's wrong? They found you. Tracker on my fence. We need to move, now. Where? The church. Robert will hide you until we figure this out. James! No arguments. Get your shoes. She moved fast. No hesitation, no questions. Whatever softness he'd seen a moment ago vanished beneath the CEO mask. She was all efficiency now, all survival instinct. He grabbed his truck keys, his phone, the go bag he'd kept packed since the fire department. Old habits saving new lives. They were at the truck when headlights cut through the darkness. Two vehicles coming fast up the drive. James pushed Catherine behind him, hand moving to the rifle rack inside the cab. But the vehicles stopped 50 yards out, engines idling, waiting. A spotlight blazed to life, pinning them in white light. James raised a hand to shield his eyes. A voice echoed through a megaphone, professional and cold. "Emergency services, we're looking for Catherine Wade. Reports indicate she may need medical assistance." Emergency services didn't travel in pairs, didn't arrive without sirens. James kept his hand on the rifle, didn't pull it free yet. "There's no one here by that name." A man stepped into the light, tall and lean, wearing reflective gear that looked too clean for actual rescue work. He smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sir, we have reports of a vehicle accident. Miss Wade's car was found burned. We're just trying to locate her, make sure she's safe." "Already told you. No one here by that name." The man's smile didn't waver. "You're sure about that? Because we detected a signal from this location, GPS tracker. Funny thing about those, they don't lie." "Then your equipment's wrong. Now get off my property." "We can't do that, sir. Not until we've verified Miss Wade's status." Ranger growled low, the sound vibrating through the still air. The man's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to James, who something shifted in his expression. Calculation replacing the false concern. "This doesn't have to be difficult," the man said. "We just need to talk to her 5 minutes, then we'll be on our way." "And I said there's no one here, so unless you've got a warrant, you need to leave." The man studied James for a long moment, then he nodded, stepped back toward the vehicles. "Have it your way, but we'll be back. With the sheriff this time. Make sure everything's proper and legal." The vehicles reversed down the drive, taillights disappearing into the darkness. James didn't move until the sound of engines faded completely. Then he turned to Catherine, who'd pressed herself against the truck like she could disappear into the metal. "They're not emergency services. I know. They'll come back, with more people, more guns. I know that too." James helped her into the truck, slid behind the wheel. His hands shook as he started the engine, adrenaline finally catching up to decision. He'd just lied to armed men, put himself between Catherine Wade and people who wanted her dead, brought danger to the one place in the world that was supposed to be safe for his daughter. "I'm sorry," Catherine said quietly. "I should never have come here. Shouldn't have put you in this position." "Too late for sorry. We deal with what is." They drove in silence, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. James took back roads, avoided anything that looked like civilization. The church was 20 minutes away if you went direct, 40 if you knew the old ranch roads that barely qualified as paths. He chose the long way. Catherine broke the silence first. "Your daughter, Sarah, how old is she?" 7. "And she lives with you full-time? Has since her mother died, no one else to take her?" "That must be hard, doing it alone." "Hard's relative. She's alive, she's healthy. That's all that matters." "The heart medication, I saw her take it. Congenital?" James's jaw tightened. He didn't want to talk about Sarah's condition with a stranger. Didn't want to share that particular fear. But Catherine had seen it, and lying now felt pointless. "Mild defect. Manageable with medication and regular checkups. Could need surgery someday, but the doctors say not yet." "And if she does need surgery? Then we'll deal with it. Same as everything else." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "You're a good father. I could tell from the way she looks at you. That kind of trust doesn't come from obligation. Being a father isn't about being good, it's about showing up. Every day, even when you're tired or scared or don't know what you're doing." "Is that what you tell yourself?" "It's what Emily told me. The day before she died, said just show up for her, that's all she needs." The church appeared through the trees, white paint glowing in the truck's headlights. St. Bridget's had been there for 60 years, weathering storms and droughts and the slow death of rural Texas. Robert Hayes had taken over 5 years ago, turned the struggling congregation into something resembling a community. He'd baptized Sarah, buried Emily, stood beside James when the world felt too heavy to carry alone. The lights in the rectory were already on. Robert met them at the door in a bathrobe and slippers, gray hair sticking up at odd angles. He took one look at Catherine's bandaged head and James's expression, then stepped aside. "Come in, both of you." Inside smelled like coffee and old books. Robert gestured them toward the kitchen table, poured 3 mugs without asking. He sat across from them, studying Catherine with the same careful attention he gave to every troubled soul who found their way to his door. "This is Catherine Wade," James said, "CEO of Wade Energy. Someone tried to kill her tonight. They think she's dead, and they just showed up at my place looking for her." Robert's expression didn't change. He'd spent 20 years prosecuting criminals, heard every story, seen every angle. Nothing surprised him anymore. "How many people know you're alive?" "Just us," Catherine said, "and whoever was at James's ranch, but they don't have confirmation, just suspicion." "Good. Suspicion we can work with." Robert sipped his coffee, thinking. Why kill you? Water rights fraud, $2.3 billion in illegal acquisitions. My CFO, Richard Blake, has been forging contracts, stealing from ranchers. I found proof last week, confronted him yesterday. Tonight my car's brakes failed on a curve I've driven 1,000 times. You have this proof? Digital files, emails, contracts, shell company records, all encrypted on a secure server, which Richard will destroy the moment he realizes you're not dead. If he hasn't already. Robert stood, paced to the window. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten, purple giving way to gray. You need time to secure your evidence, to find allies you can trust, and you need somewhere to hide while you do it. That's why we're here, James said. I can give you a few days, maybe a week, but this building isn't exactly Fort Knox. If they want to find you, they will. Then what do we do? Robert turned back to face them. We make them think you're somewhere else, plant false trails, create confusion, buy enough time for you to get ahead of this. How? Leave that to me. I still have friends in the prosecutor's office, people who owe me favors. He looked at Catherine. But you need to understand something. Once we start this, there's no going back. You'll be choosing a side, making enemies. Are you ready for that? Catherine's hands wrapped around her coffee mug, seeking warmth in the cooling porcelain. James watched her face, saw the calculation, the weighing of costs. This was a woman used to making decisions that affected thousands of people. But this decision was different. This one was about whether she wanted to live or die, fight or surrender. I'm ready, she said finally. I spent 5 years building a company, forgot to build a life. Maybe it's time to remember what actually matters. Robert nodded. Then we start now. James, you need to get back to your daughter. Act normal. If they come asking questions, you tell them the truth. A woman had car trouble. You helped. She left. Nothing more. What about Catherine? She stays here. I'll set her up in the basement. No one uses it except for storage. He looked at Catherine. It's not comfortable, but it's safe. Safe is all I need right now. James stood, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried him through the last 6 hours was fading, leaving behind the weight of everything he'd just done. Lying to armed men, harboring a fugitive, putting his daughter's safety at risk for a woman he'd known less than a night. I should go. Catherine stood too. James, thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. Still, you didn't have to help. Most people wouldn't have. Most people didn't lose someone because they were too scared to act. The words came out harder than he meant them. He softened his voice. Get some rest. I'll check on you tomorrow. Outside, the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. James drove home slowly, watching the world wake up around him. Ranchers heading out to check their herds, school buses starting their routes. Normal life continuing while his had just tilted sideways into something dangerous and unknown. Sarah was awake when he got back, sitting at Mrs. Henderson's kitchen table with a bowl of cereal and her drawing pad. She looked up when he walked in, smiled that gap-toothed smile that made everything else fall away. "Morning, Daddy." "Morning, baby girl. Sleep okay?" "Uh-huh. Is the sad lady gone?" James knelt beside her chair, brushed a curl from her forehead. "Yeah, she had somewhere else to be." "Is she gonna be okay?" "I hope so." Sarah studied his face, those wise eyes seeing too much again. "You're worried about her?" "A little." "It's okay to worry about people. Mama said that's how you know you care." James pulled his daughter into a hug, breathing in her strawberry scent, feeling her small heart beating against his chest. 7 years old and already teaching him lessons he kept forgetting. "Mama was a smart lady." "The smartest," Sarah agreed. She pulled back, looked at her drawing. "I made this for the sad lady in case she comes back." The sketch showed 3 figures holding hands, a tall man, a smaller woman, and a child in between. Above them, stars, purple stars, like the ones on Emily's quilt. "It's beautiful, baby. It's our family, but with the sad lady, 'cause she needs one." James's throat tightened. "What makes you think she needs a family?" "Everyone needs a family, Daddy. That's what makes people not sad anymore." He kissed her forehead, tucked the drawing into his pocket. "You're pretty smart too, you know that?" "I know," Sarah said seriously. "Mama told me before she went to heaven. Said I had to be smart to help you when you were sad." The grief hit fresh, the way it always did when Sarah mentioned Emily so casually, like death was just another room in a house they all lived in. James blinked back tears, managed a smile. "Well, you're doing a great job." They went home together, Sarah chattering about her drawings and the book Mrs. Henderson had read her last night. James made pancakes shaped like hearts, Sarah's favorite, using Emily's recipe that he'd memorized by touch. Flour, eggs, milk, a pinch of cinnamon. Simple things that held whole worlds of memory. His phone buzzed while Sarah was eating. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then thought about Catherine alone in a church basement and picked up. "Mr. Collins?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "This is Deputy Martinez with the Sheriff's Department. We're following up on a report of a vehicle accident near your property last night. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" James's pulse quickened. "Sure. We understand you may have encountered Catherine Wade, CEO of Wade Energy. Can you confirm?" "Someone had car trouble. I helped. Don't know who she was." "Can you describe her?" "Woman. Maybe late 30s, dark hair. Didn't get a good look in the rain." "Where is she now?" "Left around midnight. Said she had somewhere to be." "Did she say where?" "No, and I didn't ask. Just helped and moved on." Silence on the line. He could hear papers shuffling, voices in the background. Finally. "Mr. Collins, it's important we locate Miss Wade. She may be in danger. If you hear from her again, I'll call. But I don't expect to. She seemed pretty clear about wanting to handle things herself. Thank you for your time." The line went dead. James set the phone down, looked at Sarah finishing her pancakes. Normal morning. Normal breakfast. Nothing about this felt normal. His phone buzzed again. Text message, number blocked. "They're watching. Be careful. R. Robert." Warning him that eyes were already on him, that whatever brief window of safety he'd had was closing. James deleted the message, pocketed the phone. "Daddy, you okay?" He forced a smile. "Yeah, baby, just work stuff, nothing important." Sarah studied him with those 2 wise eyes. "You're lying." "Sarah, Mama said it's okay to lie sometimes when you're trying to protect people. Is that what you're doing?" James knelt beside her chair again, took her small hands in his. "Yeah, that's what I'm doing." "The sad lady?" "Her and you. Mostly you." Sarah squeezed his fingers. "I'm not scared, Daddy. You always keep me safe." The trust in her voice broke something in him. 7 years old, and she believed he could protect her from anything. But he'd failed before. Failed Emily. Failed Sarah when her mother died and left her with a father who barely knew how to braid hair. How could he promise to keep her safe now, when men with guns were asking questions and the world felt like it was tilting toward violence? "I love you more than the sky," he whispered. "More than the stars," she whispered back. They finished breakfast together. Sarah went to her room to play. James stood at the sink, washing dishes and watching the driveway through the window, waiting for headlights that might bring questions he couldn't answer. Waiting for the phone to ring with news that Catherine was found. Waiting for his quiet life to shatter completely. The water ran over his hands, warm and steady. He thought about aquifers and drought patterns and the $2.3 billion Richard Blake had stolen from people who couldn't afford to lose it. Thought about Catherine Wade hiding in a basement, trusting him to keep her alive. Thought about Sarah's drawing, 3 figures holding hands beneath purple stem. Everyone needs a family. That's what makes people not sad anymore. His daughter, 7 years old, had figured out what took most people a lifetime to learn. Or maybe she'd learned it from Emily, who'd known even in dying that love was the only thing worth holding on to. James dried his hands, checked his phone. No new messages. Outside, the sun climbed higher, burning off the last of the morning mist. Tuesday morning in hill country, Texas. Cattle calling from distant pastures, wind moving through oak trees, the world turning like it always did, indifferent to the small dramas of people trying to survive it. He pulled Sarah's drawing from his pocket, studied the 3 figures. The sad lady, his daughter had called her. Someone who needed a family. Someone who'd looked at him with those sharp green eyes and said, "You saved my life, so now this body is yours." He still didn't understand what she'd meant. Maybe she didn't either. Maybe it was just the shock talking, trauma finding words that made no sense in daylight. Or maybe it was something else, a promise, a debt, a connection forged in fire that couldn't be unmade. James folded the drawing carefully, tucked it back in his pocket. Whatever came next, he'd face it the same way he'd faced everything since Emily died. One step at a time, one decision at a time, showing up. Even when he didn't know what he was doing. "That's all she needs," Emily had said, "just show up." He was showing up. For Catherine. For Sarah. For the truth that someone needed to speak even if it cost him everything. The phone buzzed again. "Robert, come tonight. We need to talk. Bring Sarah if you have to. It's not safe to leave her alone." James read the message 3 times before it sank in. Not safe. His home, the one place that was supposed to be sanctuary, wasn't safe anymore. Because he'd pulled a woman from a burning car. Because he'd chosen to help instead of walking away. He thought about the men at his fence last night, their false smiles and cold eyes. Thought about Deputy Martinez's questions. Thought about Richard Blake somewhere out there, realizing his plan had failed and Catherine Wade was still alive. Not safe. Sarah called from her room, asking him to come look at something she'd drawn. James pocketed the phone, pushed away the fear trying to take root in his chest. He had hours before dark, hours to be a normal father doing normal things with his daughter. Hours before the world demanded he choose between safety and truth. He chose truth 4 years ago when Emily was dying, and he'd promised to tell Sarah everything honestly, no matter how hard. He'd choose it again today. That's what good men did. They showed up. They told the truth. They protected the people who needed protecting, even when it cost them everything. James walked down the hall to his daughter's room, ready to admire whatever she'd created. Ready to be present for these small moments that made up a life. The storm was coming. He could feel it building on the horizon, gathering strength. But for now, for these few hours, he could be just a father. Just a man who loved his daughter more than the sky, more than the stars. 3 days later, James pulled into the church parking lot with Sarah buckled in beside him, her backpack stuffed with coloring books and the tablet she used for homework. Wednesday afternoon, 4:17 p.m. The school run had become their routine since Catherine arrived. Pick up Sarah, drive to street, drive to Bridget's, pretend this was normal while the world tilted further off its axis with each passing hour. Robert met them at the side door, the one that led directly to the basement stairs. The pastor had aged in 72 hours, new lines carved around his eyes, shoulders carrying weight that sermons couldn't lift. "She's downstairs, been asking for you both." Sarah clutched her backpack straps, excitement bright in her face. She'd been talking about the sad lady all week, asking when they could visit again, drawing pictures James kept finding tucked into his lunch bag. The newest one showed 4 figures now, adding Robert to the family portrait. The basement smelled like old hymnals and concrete. Catherine sat at a folding table Robert had dragged down, laptop open, papers scattered across every surface. She'd borrowed clothes from the church donation box, jeans that hung loose on her frame, a faded Austin FC t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Without the CEO armor, she looked younger, more real. She stood when they entered, and Sarah ran to her before James could intervene. The hug surprised them both, Sarah throwing her arms around Catherine's waist, Catherine's hands hovering uncertainly before settling on the girl's shoulders. "I missed you," Sarah announced. "Did you miss me?" Catherine's throat worked. "I did, actually. More than I expected. I brought you something." Sarah dug into her backpack, produced a drawing. 3 figures under purple stars. "It's our family, see? That's Daddy, that's me, and that's you. I made the stars purple 'cause that was Mama's favorite color. She's in heaven, but I think she'd like you." James watched Catherine's face crumble and rebuild in the space of a heartbeat. She took the drawing with hands that trembled slightly. "It's beautiful. Thank you, Sarah." "You're welcome. Can I color while you and Daddy talk about grown-up stuff?" "Of course." Sarah settled at the far end of the table, pulled out her crayons, and disappeared into whatever world existed inside her 7-year-old mind. James took the chair across from Catherine, close enough to see the exhaustion bruising the skin beneath her eyes. "You sleeping?" "Not much. Every noise sounds like footsteps. Every car outside could be Richard's people." She gestured at the papers. "I've been going through everything I can access remotely. Bank records, email servers, contract files. The more I dig, the worse it gets." "How bad?" "Worse than I thought. Richard didn't just steal water rights. He's been using Wade Energy as a shell for a dozen other schemes. Money laundering through construction contracts, kickbacks from city officials in San Antonio and Houston. He's built an entire criminal enterprise inside my company, and I was too busy expanding to notice." James looked at the spreadsheets, the highlighted sections, the notes in Catherine's precise handwriting, numbers that represented lives destroyed, communities drained, trust violated on a scale he couldn't fully comprehend. "You need to take this to the FBI." "I know. Robert's been making calls. There's an agent in San Antonio, Melissa Harper. She handles corporate fraud cases. Robert thinks she'll listen." "When?" "Tomorrow, maybe. She's out of town this week, but James—" Catherine's voice dropped. "Once I go public with this, Richard will know I'm alive. He'll come after me with everything he has, and anyone helping me becomes a target. Already figured that part out. Your daughter is why I'm doing this. Sarah needs to grow up in a world where truth matters, where people who do wrong face consequences. I can't teach her that if I run every time standing up gets dangerous." Catherine studied him, those green eyes seeing past the words to whatever drove them. "You really believe that? That one person can make a difference?" "Have to. Otherwise, what's the point?" Sarah looked up from her coloring. "Miss Catherine, are you hungry? Daddy brought snacks. He always brings good snacks." James pulled the container from his bag. Apple slices, cheese cubes, crackers. Simple food that Emily used to pack for their weekend trips to the lake. Sarah had requested it specifically this morning, said the sad lady probably missed real food. They ate together, the 3 of them crowded around papers worth billions in theft. Sarah told Catherine about school, about her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who let her skip ahead in reading. about the boy named Tommy who pulled her hair, but she thought maybe he liked her. Normal child things that filled the basement with something other than fear and conspiracy. Catherine listened with an attention James recognized, the kind people give when they're starving for connection and don't realize how badly until someone offers it. She asked questions, laughed at Sarah's jokes, helped her color a rainbow that spanned the whole page. "You're good with her," James observed after Sarah wandered over to investigate Robert's storage boxes. "I'm not. I don't know how to talk to children." "Could have fooled me. She makes it easy. She just says what she thinks, expects you to do the same. No games, no hidden agendas. That's who she is. Emily raised her to believe the world was safe enough for honesty." "Was she right?" James watched his daughter examine a box of old Sunday school materials, her curiosity unfiltered by cynicism or fear. "I'm trying to make sure she was." Robert appeared at the basement door carrying takeout containers. "Dinner. Figured you'd all be here a while." They ate together, barbecue from the place down the highway, brisket and ribs and coleslaw. Sarah sat beside Catherine, chattering between bites about her latest drawing project. The girl had decided to illustrate an entire story about a princess who saved herself instead of waiting for rescue. Catherine helped her plot the scenes, suggesting ways the princess could outsmart the dragon. "She doesn't need a prince?" Sarah asked. "Maybe she finds one later, after she's already won, but she saves herself first." Sarah nodded seriously. "Like you. You're saving yourself from the bad man." Catherine's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She set it down carefully. "I'm trying to, but I have help. Your dad, Pastor Robert, people who didn't have to get involved but did anyway. That's what good people do. They help even when it's hard." Sarah looked at James. "Right, Daddy?" "Right, baby girl." After dinner, Sarah's eyelids started drooping. The medication she took for her heart always made her sleepy around 7. James pulled out the spare blanket he'd started keeping in the truck, made a nest of coats and cushions in the corner where she could rest. "Can Miss Catherine read me a story first?" Catherine looked panicked. James started to intervene, but she straightened her shoulders, nodded. "What kind of story?" "The one about the brave girl, the one you were telling me about, the princess." So Catherine improvised, weaving a tale about a princess locked in a tower who discovered she could pick the lock with her hairpin. Sarah listened with heavy eyes, occasionally interjecting questions about what the princess did next. By the time the princess escaped and found her own kingdom to rule, Sarah was asleep, breathing sup and even. Catherine pulled the blanket higher, tucked it around Sarah's shoulders with awkward gentleness. She stood there for a moment, just watching the girl sleep, expression unreadable. James joined her. "You did good. She's special, you know that, right? The way she sees people, the way she trusts." "I know. Scares me sometimes how open she is. World's not always kind to people who believe in goodness. Maybe that's why we need them, to remind the rest of us what we're supposed to be." They moved back to the table, spoke in whispers so they wouldn't wake her. Robert had returned to the rectory, leaving them alone in the basement's fluorescent quiet. Catherine showed James more of what she'd found: shell companies in Delaware and Nevada, transactions routing through offshore accounts, a web of corruption so complex it took diagrams to track. "This took years to build," James said, tracing connections between entities. "Richard didn't do this overnight. No, he's been planning since before I became CEO, maybe longer, using Wade Energy as a vehicle for every crime he could monetize." "And you had no idea?" "I trusted him. We were engaged once 5 years ago. I thought I knew him." Her laugh was hollow. "Turns out I didn't know anything. He was embezzling while we were planning our wedding, forging contracts while I was choosing flowers. And when I found out about the first theft, just a small one, barely $1 million, he convinced me to keep it quiet, said going public would destroy the company. I believed him, broke off the engagement but let him stay as CFO because he promised he'd make it right. He didn't. He got smarter, built systems I couldn't see through, And I was so focused on expansion, on proving I deserved the CEO position my father left me, that I didn't look hard enough. She rubbed her eyes. Now 50 families have lost their water rights. Ranchers who've worked the same land for generations, who trusted Wade Energy because my father was honorable. Richard stole their futures, and I handed him the tools to do it. James covered her hand with his, the touch surprising them both. You didn't know. Can't blame yourself for someone else's choices. Can't I? I'm the CEO. Everything that happens under my watch is my responsibility. Then take responsibility by fixing it. Agent Harper, the evidence, all of it. You make Richard face what he's done. Catherine turned her hand over, palm against his. Her fingers were cold despite the basement's warmth. What if it's not enough? What if he's covered his tracks too well? Then we find another way. But we don't stop. That's not an option. She looked at him then, really looked, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with water rights or corporate fraud. Connection, understanding, the recognition of two people who'd both lost something essential and were trying to figure out how to be whole again. Why are you doing this, James, really? It's not just about teaching Sarah lessons or fighting corruption. There's something else. He thought about lying, about deflecting with the easy answers he'd been giving for 3 days. But Catherine had just laid bare her failures and regrets. She deserved honesty. 4 years ago, Emily was in the hospital. Final stages. The doctors said she had maybe a week. I was sitting with her when I got called to a warehouse fire downtown. Big one, 5 alarms. Captain said they needed everyone. He paused, the memory sharp as broken glass. I told Emily I had to go. She said, then go, people need you. So I went. Catherine waited, patient. There was a family on the 3rd floor, mother and 2 kids. My partner, Sarah Chen, same name as my daughter, different person. She and I were supposed to go in together. But when we got there, the floor was unstable. I could hear them screaming, but I hesitated. 3 seconds, maybe 5, trying to calculate if the floor would hold our weight. Sarah didn't hesitate. She went in. Floor collapsed. She fell through, broke her neck on impact. His voice stayed level, clinical. They called me back to the hospital 20 minutes later. Emily died while I was pulling Sarah Chen's body from the rubble. I missed my wife's last words because I hesitated, and my partner died because she didn't. James, so when you ask why I'm doing this, it's because I don't hesitate anymore. Someone needs help, I act. Someone's in danger, I step in, because the alternative is standing still while people die, and I've already done that once. Catherine's hand tightened on his. That's not fair to yourself. You're not responsible for your partner's death. She made her own choice. So did I. The choice to hesitate, to calculate risk instead of trusting my training. That hesitation cost her life in my last moments with Emily. I won't make that mistake again, even if it costs you everything. Already lost everything that mattered. Now I'm just trying to make sure Sarah doesn't have to learn the same lessons I did. They sat in silence, hands still connected across papers documenting billions in theft. Sarah slept in the corner, peaceful and trusting. Somewhere above them, Robert moved through the rectory, preparing for tomorrow's service. The world kept turning, indifferent to confessions and regrets. Catherine spoke first, voice barely above a whisper. I don't want this to be an act. The family thing. The way Sarah draws us together. The way you look at me like I'm a person instead of a problem to solve. She pulled her hand back, wrapped both arms around herself. But I don't know how to want that. Don't know how to let people in without calculating what it costs. Then don't calculate. Just feel. I can't. That's not who I am. I'm the woman who chose work over relationships, who let her fiancé steal from her company because she was too proud to admit she'd been fooled. I'm cold. Richard said it. Everyone who's ever tried to get close says it eventually. James leaned forward, caught her eyes. Say it again. She blinked. What? What you just said, say it again. Look at me when you say it. Catherine's jaw tightened. She met his gaze, held it. I'm cold. I don't know how to let people in. I'm scared of needing someone because everyone I've ever needed has left or betrayed me. I'm scared of losing again. There. Happy? No, but at least it's honest. He kept his voice gentle. You're not cold, Catherine. You're scared, there's a difference. And being scared doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. I don't know how to be human around people, just at work, in boardrooms where everything has rules and agendas. Sarah's asleep in the corner wearing your borrowed blanket. You made up a story about a princess who saved herself. That seemed pretty human to me. Catherine glanced at Sarah, something soft crossing her features. She's different. Kids are different. They don't expect anything except what you give them. Maybe that's all anyone should expect, what you give, not what they think you owe them. Is that what you expect from me? I don't expect anything. You want to leave tomorrow, disappear, handle this alone. That's your choice. But if you stay, if you let us help, then all I expect is honesty. No games, no calculating, just truth. Catherine's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, looked away. I'm not good at that. Neither was I. Emily taught me. Said truth was the only thing worth building on. Everything else was sand. She sounds like she was wise. Wisest person I knew. Until I met her daughter. He smiled. Sarah's got her mother's gift for seeing what matters. Rest of us spend our lives distracted by what doesn't. A sound upstairs made them both freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, heavy and deliberate. Robert's voice, raised and tense. Then another voice, unfamiliar, demanding. James stood, moved to the basement door. Locked, but locks only delayed the inevitable. He looked at Catherine, saw his own fear reflected in her face. Stay quiet. I'll handle this. James, please. He climbed the stairs, pressed his ear to the door. Robert was arguing with someone, insisting the church was private property, that they needed a warrant. The other voice was calm, professional, unmoved. We have reports she's here, Pastor. Catherine Wade. We just need to verify her safety. And I'm telling you, she's not. You're welcome to search if you have legal authority, otherwise get off church property. We can come back with the sheriff, but that'll create a scene, media attention. Is that what you want for your congregation? James heard the threat beneath the words. Turn her over or face public scrutiny that would destroy the church's reputation. Extortion dressed in concern. The door handle turned, locked, but someone was testing it. James backed down the stairs, grabbed Catherine's arm. We need to leave, now. How? They're at the front. Back exit, through the storage room, comes out behind the cemetery. He scooped Sarah up, blanket and all. She stirred, murmured something, but didn't wake. Catherine grabbed her laptop, left the papers scattered. They moved through Robert's storage, old pews and broken chairs and boxes of hymn books, toward the narrow door at the back. The door opened onto a concrete stairwell, moss-slick and dark. James climbed one-handed, Sarah cradled against his chest, Catherine behind him. At the top, cemetery headstones stretched toward the tree line, gray markers standing witness to a century of the faithful departed. They ran. Not toward the parking lot where James's truck sat exposed, but into the trees beyond the cemetery. Cedar and oak swallowed them, hill country darkness providing cover that daylight would have denied. Sarah woke halfway through, wrapped her arms around James's neck without question. She'd learned in 4 years of living with a firefighter father that sometimes you ran first and asked questions later. They stopped a quarter-mile into the woods, lungs burning. James set Sarah down, checked to make sure Catherine still had the laptop. Where do we go? Catherine asked between gasps. Old Kellerman Ranch, abandoned for 3 years. Owner died, heirs couldn't agree on selling. Place is empty, but the barn's still solid. They'll search everywhere. Not everywhere, just the obvious places. Old man Kellerman built that ranch to withstand tornadoes. Barn's got a storm cellar nobody knows about except locals. Sarah tugged his sleeve. Daddy, what's happening? Remember how we talked about the bad people looking for Miss Catherine? Uh-huh. They came to the church, so we're playing hide and seek for a little while. Can you be very quiet? Sarah nodded, eyes wide but trusting. I'm good at quiet. They moved through the woods, James navigating by memory and starlight. The Kellerman place was 2 miles east, most of it through county land. Nobody owned or cared about. His shoulder ached from carrying Sarah, but he didn't put her down. Couldn't risk her stumbling, making noise, drawing attention. Catherine matched his pace, city shoes inadequate for terrain but determination overriding discomfort. She'd stripped off the bulky jacket, moved in just the t-shirt and jeans, laptop clutched against her chest like sacred text. The barn appeared through the trees, tin roof reflecting moonlight. James approached from the back, checked for fresh tire tracks or signs of recent visitors. Nothing. The place was exactly as he remembered. Weathered wood, rusted equipment, the kind of desolation that came from land nobody wanted badly enough to fight over. Inside smelled like hay and motor oil and time. The storm cellar was hidden beneath a false floor in the tack room. Disguised so well, James had only found it as a teenager exploring with friends. He moved the loose boards, revealed the ladder descending into darkness. Down there? Trust me. Catherine went first, James passing Sarah down to her before following. The cellar was smaller than the church basement, barely 8 by 10, but it had been stocked for emergencies. Canned goods on metal shelves, bottled water, a generator that might still work. Old man Kellerman had believed in being prepared for the worst. Death had found him anyway, but his paranoia might save them now. James pulled the boards back into place above them, sealing them into underground silence. Catherine found a battery-powered lantern on the shelf, coaxed it to life. Weak yellow light pushed back the darkness just enough to see faces. Sarah looked around with curiosity instead of fear. It's like a cave, a secret cave. That's right, baby, our secret cave. How long do we stay here? Just till morning. Then we figure out what's next. Catherine sat against the wall, pulled her knees to her chest. She was shaking, adrenaline or fear or both. Sarah noticed, walked over and without asking climbed into her lap. Catherine's arms came around the girl automatically, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. It's okay to be scared, Sarah said matter-of-factly. Daddy says being scared means you're smart enough to know when things are dangerous. Catherine's laugh came out broken. Then I must be very smart right now. You are. Daddy said you run a whole company. That's pretty smart. Running a company is easy compared to this. Sarah looked up at her. Compared to what? Being a person. Being real instead of pretending. Why would you pretend? Because pretending is safer. If people don't know the real you, they can't hurt you. Sarah considered this with the seriousness she gave to all important questions. But they can't love you either, if they don't know who you really are. Catherine's eyes found James across the small space. He saw the words land, saw them break through whatever walls she'd built between herself and feeling. She held Sarah tighter. You're very wise for 7. Mama taught me, before she went to heaven. She said the real stuff is what matters, not the pretend stuff. Your mama was right. They settled in to wait. James found blankets in a sealed plastic container, spread them on the concrete floor. Sarah curled between him and Catherine, the 3 of them forming a small island of warmth in the underground cold. The lantern cast shadows that danced across walls, making the space feel even smaller. Hours passed. Sarah slept again, exhausted by the run through the woods. Catherine stayed awake, eyes open but distant, processing everything that had happened in 72 hours. James watched her, saw the calculations running behind those green eyes, the constant assessment of risk and reward. Stop thinking, he whispered. I can't. It's what I do. Think, plan, analyze. And where's that gotten you? besides hunted and hiding in a hole. She flinched. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. But you can't think your way out of this, Catherine. You can only feel your way through it. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. Sarah's teaching you. Every time she hugs you without asking, every time she trusts you with a story or a secret. That's what feeling looks like. No agenda, no calculation, just connection. Catherine looked down at the sleeping girl. What if I mess it up? What if I let her down? Then you apologize and try better next time. That's all any of us can do. Is that what you do? With her? Every day, mess up, apologize, try again. Being a parent isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up even when you fail. You don't seem like you fail much. James's laugh was quiet and bitter. I fail constantly. Forgot to pack her lunch twice this week. Burned dinner Monday. Snapped at her Tuesday when she asked about Emily and I wasn't ready to talk about it. I'm figuring this out as I go, same as everyone else. But you don't hesitate, you act. I hesitate all the time. Just learn to act anyway. Hesitation doesn't stop being there. You just decide it won't stop you. Catherine was quiet for a long moment, then so soft he almost missed it. Teach me. Teach you what? How to not let fear win. How to act even when you're scared. How to be human. James reached across Sarah, found Catherine's hand in the darkness. You're already doing it. Sitting in this cellar, trusting us. Letting Sarah sleep on you even though children terrify you. That's being human. That's acting despite fear. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. But it's enough for right now. And right now is all we've got. They sat in silence, hands connected, Sarah breathing soft between them. Above, the barn creaked in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The world outside the cellar kept moving, kept threatening, but for these hours they were safe, hidden together. Dawn came without fanfare. Light filtered through the cracks in the boards above, turning the cellar gray instead of black. Sarah woke first, stretched, and looked around like she'd forgotten where they were. Then memory returned and she smiled. We survived the night, like adventurers. That's right, James said. Best adventurers in Texas. They ate granola bars from the emergency supplies, drank bottled water that tasted like plastic. Catherine checked her laptop battery, 30% left. She'd been monitoring Wade Energy's internal communications, watching Richard move pieces on a board she could no longer control. He announced my death officially yesterday. Board meeting this morning to appoint interim CEO. Guess who he's nominating? Himself. Of course. And without me there to contest it, he'll get the votes. By noon today, Richard Blake will control Wade Energy completely. Then we stop him before noon. How? James pulled out his phone. 1 bar of signal, but it was enough. He dialed Robert, waited through 4 rings before the pastor answered. James, thank God, where are you? Somewhere safe. What happened last night? They searched the church. Took 2 hours, turned everything upside down. Found nothing, obviously. Deputy Martinez seemed genuinely concerned about Catherine's welfare. The others, they weren't law enforcement, private security, probably Richard's people. They say what they wanted? Just to verify her safety, but James, they're not done looking. Martinez said she'd be back today with actual FBI. Said if we're hiding Catherine, we're obstructing justice. We're protecting a witness from the person who tried to kill her. That's not obstruction. Tell that to a judge. Listen, Melissa Harper, the FBI agent I've been trying to reach, she finally called back. She's in San Antonio this morning, wants to meet. Says she's been investigating Wade Energy for 6 months on an anonymous tip. Catherine grabbed the phone from James. What kind of tip? Catherine, you're alive. Barely. What was the tip about? Harper wouldn't give details, said someone inside Wade Energy had been feeding her information about financial irregularities. Started small. Expense account fraud, padded invoices, but the more she dug, the bigger it got. Now she thinks there's a massive RICO case waiting to break. She just needs someone willing to testify. Catherine and James locked eyes. An inside source. Someone who'd known about Richard's crimes and had been quietly building a case. The question was who. "We'll meet with her," Catherine said, "but not in San Antonio. Somewhere public. Somewhere Richard's people can't control." "Where?" "The capital. Austin. Steps of the building at noon. Lots of witnesses, lots of cameras. He can't touch me there without exposing himself." Robert was silent for a moment. "That's risky. You'll be completely visible." "That's the point. I've been hiding for 3 days. Time to stop running and start fighting." They disconnected. James studied Catherine's face, saw the CEO returning, the armor clicking back into place. She was building herself into the person who could walk into a public space and dare Richard to stop her. "You sure about this?" "No. But you said don't hesitate. Act anyway, so I'm acting. We need to get you cleaned up first. Can't walk into the Capitol looking like you've been sleeping in a hole." Sarah tugged Catherine's sleeve. "You can borrow my brush, and I have hair ties. Mama taught me how to make braids." Catherine's expression softened. "You'd do my hair?" "Uh-huh. It'll be pretty, like the princess in my story." So Sarah braided Catherine's hair in the dim cellar light, her small fingers working with the focus she gave to her drawings. Catherine sat perfectly still, eyes closed, surrendering control to a 7-year-old's gentle touch. James watched them, saw Catherine's shoulders gradually relax, saw the transformation from hunted fugitive to something stronger. When Sarah finished, Catherine looked different, younger, more herself, whoever that was. Sarah handed her a compact mirror from James's emergency kit. "See? Pretty." Catherine studied her reflection, touched the braid, and something in her face cracked open. "Thank you, Sarah. It's perfect." They climbed out of the cellar into morning light that felt too bright after underground darkness. James's truck was still at the church, which meant they needed another way to Austin. He called Mrs. Henderson, asked if he could borrow her sedan. She asked no questions, said she'd leave it at the Dairy Queen parking lot with keys under the mat. The walk back to town took an hour through back roads and tree cover. They reached the Dairy Queen at 9:45 a.m. Mrs. Henderson's blue Camry sat exactly where she'd promised, keys waiting. James found a note tucked into the visor. "Be safe. Sarah needs her daddy. We all need good men like you." The drive to Austin was silent. Sarah colored in the back seat. Catherine stared out the window, fingers drumming against her laptop. James navigated through traffic, adrenaline keeping him sharp despite no sleep. They parked 3 blocks from the Capitol. The building rose white and imposing against blue sky, dome gleaming in late morning sun. Tourists clustered on the steps, school groups in matching t-shirts, lobbyists in suits conducting business over coffee. Normal people doing normal things, unaware that a dead CEO was about to walk into their midst. "Ready?" James asked. Catherine took a breath. "Ready." Sarah grabbed both their hands. "We're a team, like the Avengers, but for real." They walked toward the Capitol together, 3 figures moving through the crowd. James scanned for threats, for faces that didn't belong, for the subtle tells of people who watched instead of participated. Catherine walked with her head high, shoulders back, every inch the CEO despite borrowed clothes and DIY braids. The steps stretched before them. Melissa Harper stood near the top, exactly where Robert had said she'd be. Mid-50s, gray suit, the kind of face that had seen too much corruption to be shocked by anything. She spotted Catherine and descended to meet them. "Miss Wade, Robert Hayes said you were alive. I needed to see it to believe it." Catherine extended her hand. "Agent Harper, thank you for meeting us." "Thank your pastor friend. He's been very persistent." Harper's eyes shifted to James and Sarah. "And you are?" "James Collins, friend of Catherine's." "Some friend. You know, harboring a fugitive." "She's not a fugitive. She's a victim. There's a difference." Harper studied him, reassessing. "Fair enough. And the girl?" "My daughter. She stays with me." "This isn't a conversation for children." Sarah looked up at Harper with those wise eyes. "I'm 7. I know about bad people. Miss Catherine needs help stopping them. We're here to help." Harper's expression shifted, something almost like a smile. 7 going on 40. All right, let's talk. But not here. Too exposed. She led them inside, through security and marble halls, to a small conference room on the 3rd floor. The door locked behind them. Harper set a digital recorder on the table. Everything you say is on record, you understand? I understand, Catherine said, and I want it on record, every detail, every crime. Then start from the beginning. Tell me about Richard Blake. Catherine talked for 40 minutes straight. The water rights theft, the shell companies, the forged contracts, the money laundering and kickbacks, and the web of corruption that stretched from Texas to Delaware. She pulled up files on her laptop, showed Harper the evidence she'd compiled. Bank transactions, email chains, board meeting minutes where Richard had lied directly to directors. Harper listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow pad. When Catherine finished, the agent sat back. This is bigger than I thought. The tip we received only covered about 20% of what you're showing me. Someone inside Wade Energy has been feeding us information for months, but they didn't know the full scope. Who was it? Can't tell you that, source protection. But they reached out again yesterday. Said Richard Blake was planning something major today. Emergency board meeting to consolidate power. They thought you should know. Catherine checked her watch. 11:47 a.m. The meeting's at noon. He's going to have himself appointed CEO before anyone can question it. Can you stop him? Not from here. I'd need to be at Wade Energy headquarters, in the boardroom, on record opposing the appointment. Harper shook her head. That's suicide. Blake's people will be watching the building. You walk in there, you're dead before you reach the elevator. Then I'll have to be fast. James grabbed her arm. Catherine, no. This is exactly what he wants. You exposed, vulnerable, easy to eliminate. I don't have a choice. If Richard becomes CEO, he'll destroy every bit of evidence I haven't secured. He'll rewrite the narrative, paint me as unstable or criminal. I'll be dead and discredited. Everyone who trusted Wade Energy will lose everything. You'll be actually dead. That matters more than reputation. Catherine pulled free, stood. Not to me. I've spent 3 days hiding while he stole my company and destroyed people's lives. I'm done running. I'm going to that boardroom, I'm going to present this evidence, and I'm going to make sure every person in that building knows exactly what Richard Blake has done. I'll go with you, Harper said. FBI presence might keep him from trying anything overt. And us, James added. You're not doing this alone. Catherine looked at Sarah, still sitting quietly with her crayons. I can't ask you to bring your daughter into danger. Sarah spoke up before James could. I'm already in danger. The bad man knows about us now, about Daddy, so we might as well all be together. Safer that way. James wanted to argue, to insist Sarah stay somewhere protected, but she was right. Richard already knew about them. Separating now wouldn't make her safer just alone, and Catherine needed witnesses, needed people who believed in her standing beside her when she faced down the man who'd tried to erase her. We're going, he said firmly. All of us. We finish this together. Harper stood. Then we move now. Blake's meeting starts in 10 minutes. If we're doing this, we do it fast and we do it loud. Maximum visibility, maximum witnesses. He can't kill you if everyone's watching. They left the Capitol together. Harper's FBI credentials getting them through doors and past security. The agent made calls as they walked, pulling in backup, alerting her team to the situation. By the time they reached Harper's car, she had 3 more agents en route to Wade Energy. The drive took 12 minutes through midday traffic. Wade Energy headquarters rose 30 stories in downtown Austin, all glass and steel and corporate ambition. Harper parked in a loading zone, flashed her badge at the security guard who protested. Inside the lobby was cathedral, vast, marble and chrome, the Wade Energy logo etched in gold on the back wall. Employees moved through the space with purpose, none of them looking up, none of them noticing Catherine Wade walking among them like a ghost returning from death. The elevator ride to the 30th floor felt eternal. Sarah held James's hand tight, her other hand finding Catherine's. They rode in silence, 4 people ascending toward confrontation that could end in vindication or violence. The doors opened onto executive offices. Harper led the way, badge out, identifying herself to startled assistants and security. Catherine walked behind her, chin high, refusing to be diminished by the stares and whispers that followed. The boardroom doors were closed, voices inside, muffled but urgent. Harper pushed through without knocking. 12 people sat around a mahogany table, Wade Energy's board of directors. Richard Blake stood at the head mid-presentation, graphs displayed on the screen behind him. He froze when he saw Catherine. The color drained from his face so fast James thought he might faint. Catherine walked into the room like she owned it, because she did. "Hello, Richard. I believe you're in my seat." The boardroom went silent. 12 faces turned toward Catherine like she'd materialized from thin air. Richard Blake's hand trembled against the presentation remote. The graph on the screen behind him frozen mid-sentence about transitional leadership and operational continuity. Catherine walked to the head of the table, each step deliberate. Harper flanked her right side, badge visible. James stayed at the door with Sarah, positioned to block any exit. The girl's hand squeezed his, but her face showed curiosity instead of fear. She was watching the adults play chess with lives and billions. "Catherine." Richard found his voice first, smoothed it into something resembling concern. "My God, we thought you were dead. The accident. We've been mourning. Have you?" Catherine pulled out the chair he'd been standing behind, sat. "Or have you been celebrating?" The board members exchanged glances. Margaret Chen, CFO before Richard, spoke carefully. "Catherine, we saw the news, your car, the fire. They said no survivors. They were wrong. I survived, thanks to a good Samaritan who happened to be driving past when my brakes failed." Richard's jaw tightened. "Failed? Catherine, that's a terrible accident, but not an accident. Murder. My brakes were cut. Someone wanted me dead, someone who knew I'd discovered what's been happening at Wade Energy for the past 5 years. Harper stepped forward. "I'm Special Agent Melissa Harper, FBI. We've been investigating Wade Energy for 6 months based on information from a confidential source inside this company. Miss Wade has provided additional evidence that corroborates our findings and expands the scope significantly." Richard's composure cracked further. "This is absurd. Catherine's been through trauma. She's clearly not thinking straight. We should postpone this meeting, get her medical attention." "I'm thinking perfectly straight." Catherine opened her laptop, connected it to the boardroom display. Richard's graphs disappeared, replaced by spreadsheets. "These are Wade Energy's water rights acquisitions over the past 3 years. 53 contracts with ranchers across Texas. $2.3 billion in transactions, all of them fraudulent." The screen filled with names, dates, dollar amounts. Margaret Chen leaned forward, reading. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror. "These contracts were never presented to the board because Richard forged them, used shell companies to hide the transactions, paid himself kickbacks on both ends. The ranchers never sold their water rights. Richard stole them." Another board member, Thomas Wu, shook his head. "That's impossible. We would have seen the money moving. Our quarterly audits were manipulated." Catherine clicked through to another document. "Richard created parallel accounting systems. What you saw in audits was clean. What actually happened was money laundering on a scale that would make cartels jealous." She walked them through it methodically. The shell companies in Delaware, the offshore accounts in the Caymans, the construction contracts that were really kickbacks. The city officials in San Antonio and Houston who'd taken bribes to approve permits for water extraction that should never have been granted. Every crime laid out in numbers that couldn't be argued with. Richard tried anyway. "Catherine, you're making wild accusations based on what? Circumstantial evidence? I've spent 5 years building this company alongside you. You spent 5 years stealing from it. From me. From people who trusted us." She looked at him directly, no fear in her face. "You were my fiancé, Richard. I trusted you with everything. and you used that trust to destroy the company my father built. Your father built a regional energy firm. I turned it into an empire. You turned it into a criminal enterprise. The temperature in the room dropped. Richard's mask was fully gone now, replaced by something cold and calculating. He looked at the board members, searching for allies. She's been hiding for 3 days. Running from what? If her story was true, why not go straight to authorities? Why disappear? Because you tried to kill her, James said from the doorway. Everyone turned to look at him. I'm James Collins. I pulled Catherine from her burning car Tuesday night, found the tracker you planted on my property Wednesday morning, had your crew show up at my home with guns, pretending to be emergency services. I don't know what you're talking about. I sent no one. Then who did? Harper opened her phone, showed photos she'd taken outside James's ranch. These men, private security contractors, all employed by firms that Wade Energy has used for site protection. They showed up hours after Miss Wade's accident looking for her. How did they know where to look unless someone told them? Richard's silence was its own confession. Margaret Chen stood, walked to the window, then turned back. If what Catherine's saying is true, this company is facing RICO charges, bankruptcy, criminal prosecution for everyone in leadership. She looked at Richard. You've destroyed us. I've made you all rich. Every person in this room has seen their stock value triple in 3 years. You didn't ask questions when the money was good. Because we trusted you. Thomas Wu's voice shook. We believed the growth was legitimate. Nothing's legitimate. Everything is managed. I managed this company into profitability when Catherine was too busy playing CEO to notice what actual business requires: compromises, deals, gray areas. Catherine's hands flattened on the table. There's no gray area in theft, Richard. No gray area in forging contracts or bribing officials or attempting murder. You crossed every line there is, and now you're trying to blame me for not noticing fast enough. I'm stating facts. You were distracted. Your father just died, left you a company you weren't ready to run. I kept Wade Energy alive while you learned how to be a CEO. And this is my reward? Accusations and FBI investigations? Your reward is prison, where people who steal billions of dollars belong. Sarah's voice cut through the tension, small but clear. Miss Catherine's telling the truth. Bad people always say the other person is lying, but she's not. I can tell. Every eye turned to the 7-year-old standing beside her father. Richard looked at her like she was an insect that had wandered into serious matters. Who brought a child to a board meeting? I did, James said. She's my daughter, Sarah, and she's right. You're lying. Everything about you is a lie. And you're what? A nobody who happened to be driving past at the right time? Very convenient. I'm a water systems analyst for Hill County. I understand aquifer law, water rights, drought management. I've read every contract Catherine showed me. They're forgeries. The signatures don't match county records. The filing dates are wrong. A first-year law student could spot the fraud. Richard turned to Harper. You're FBI. You know how evidence works. Hearsay and spreadsheets aren't enough for criminal charges. You need proof, physical proof, witnesses willing to testify under oath. You have none of that. We have Catherine's testimony. We have the digital trail you left across 24 bank accounts. And we have your inside source who's been feeding us information for 6 months. Harper pulled out her phone, made a call. You can come in now. The boardroom door opened. A woman entered, mid-40s, wearing Wade Energy's corporate colors. James recognized her from photos Catherine had shown him. Lisa Park, VP of Operations. She walked to the table, wouldn't look at Richard. I'm the source, she said quietly. I started noticing irregularities 18 months ago. Small things at first. Expense reports that didn't match. Contracts filed without board approval. I brought my concerns to Richard. He told me I was mistaken. But I kept copies. Every suspicious document, every questionable transaction. I've been documenting everything. Richard's face went white, then red. You betrayed me. After everything I did for your career, you made me complicit in crimes. I have a family, Richard, kids. I wasn't going to lose them because you decided stealing was acceptable business practice. She set a USB drive on the table. This has everything. Backups of files you thought you deleted, recordings of conversations where you discussed the fraud explicitly, emails between you and your shell company contacts. Catherine took the drive, connected it to her laptop. Files populated the screen, thousands of documents organized by type and date, years of evidence methodically preserved by someone who'd known the truth would eventually matter. Lisa, Catherine's voice was thick, you could have come to me. I tried. 6 months ago, you were in Dubai for the expansion talks. I sent 3 emails. Richard intercepted them. Told me you'd authorized everything, that I was overstepping. I didn't know who to trust inside the company, so I went outside, called the FBI anonymous tip line. Harper nodded. She's been our source since March, but she only had pieces. You brought us the whole picture. The boardroom door opened again. 3 FBI agents entered, badges displayed. Harper gestured to Richard. Richard Blake, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and violations of RICO statutes. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane. Richard backed away from the agents. You can't prove attempted murder. Catherine crashed her own car for sympathy, for attention. She's always been dramatic. I have the mechanic's report, Catherine said calmly. Brake lines cut cleanly, not wear and tear, sabotage. And I have the tracker data showing your crew followed me to James's property within hours. You wanted me dead, Richard. The only question is whether you planned to do it yourself or hired someone. One of the agents produced handcuffs. Richard looked around the room, searching for support, for someone to intervene. Found only disgust and betrayal reflected in every face. You people are all cowards. I built this company's success. None of you had the stomach for what real business requires, Catherine least of all. She's weak, always has been, too emotional, too concerned with ethics to make the hard choices. Catherine stood, walked around the table until she faced him directly. You're right about one thing. I am concerned with ethics, with doing business in ways that don't require stealing from people who can't afford to lose. That's not weakness, Richard. That's called having dignity, something you've never understood. The agents cuffed him. Richard struggled briefly, then went still. His eyes locked on Catherine, filled with hatred so pure it was almost physical. You think you've won? This company is destroyed. Every contract I signed, every deal I made, it's all tainted now. Wade Energy is dead. You'll spend the next decade in lawsuits and settlements. Your father's legacy erased, all because you couldn't let this go. My father's legacy was honesty, building something real, not an empire of lies. If Wade Energy has to burn to restore that, then I'll light the match myself. They led Richard out. His protests echoed down the hallway, fading to silence. The boardroom felt larger without him, like a held breath finally released. Catherine sat down heavily, the strength that had carried her through the confrontation draining away all at once. Margaret Chen spoke first. What happens now? Harper answered. FBI takes over the investigation. We'll need full cooperation from everyone in this room. Depositions, document review, testimony. The scope of the fraud means this will take months to unravel, maybe years. And Wade Energy itself? That's up to the board, but realistically you're looking at bankruptcy. Criminal seizure of assets. The company as you know it is finished. Thomas Wu slumped in his chair. 50 years. My father worked here, my grandfather. All of it gone because one man decided rules didn't apply to him. Catherine's voice was steady despite the tears on her face. We can rebuild, not Wade Energy, something new, something that honors what the company was supposed to be before Richard corrupted it. With what? The FBI's seizing everything. Not my personal assets, not my reputation. Once this goes public and people see I was fighting the fraud, not enabling it. We start over, smaller, honest. We find the 53 ranchers Richard stole from and we make them whole, however long it takes. Sarah had been quiet during the arrest, watching everything with those wise eyes. Now she walked to Catherine, tugged her sleeve. Catherine looked down, surprised. You were really brave. Like the princess in the story, you saved yourself. Catherine pulled Sarah into a hug, holding her like she was the only real thing in a room full of corporate collapse. I had help. Your dad, you, Pastor Robert. I didn't save myself alone. Nobody does things alone. That's what family's for. James watched them together, felt something shift in his chest. This woman who 3 days ago had been a stranger was holding his daughter like she'd been doing it for years. And Sarah, who'd been wary of new people since Emily died, melted into Catherine's arms with complete trust. Harper approached him quietly. You did good work, Mr. Collins, getting her here alive. Most people would have walked away from that burning car. Most people haven't learned what walking away costs. Still, you put yourself and your daughter at risk for someone you didn't know. That's rare. Or stupid, Harper smiled. Sometimes the line between brave and stupid is whether it works out. Today it worked. She handed him a card. We'll need your testimony too. What you saw at the crash site, the tracker, the men who came to your property. Call my office next week, set up a time. Will Catherine be safe now? Richard's in custody, but his crew, we're rounding them up. Once we have Richard's phone records, we'll know everyone he contacted. They'll face charges too: conspiracy, attempted murder, obstruction. This investigation is just starting. James pocketed the card. Across the room, Margaret Chen was talking to Catherine about interim leadership and emergency board meetings. Thomas Wu was on his phone with Wade Energy's attorneys. Lisa Park sat alone, staring at her hands, processing the fact that her whistleblowing had just destroyed the company she'd tried to save. Sarah tugged James's hand. Daddy, I'm hungry. He checked his watch, 1:47 p.m. They'd been running on adrenaline and granola bars since dawn. Yeah, baby girl, let's find some food. Catherine heard, looked up. Can I come with you? I don't think I can handle more board discussion right now. You're the CEO. Shouldn't you stay? I'm the CEO of a company that's about to cease existing. Margaret can handle the crisis management. I just want to be somewhere normal for an hour. Please. James saw the exhaustion in her face, the vulnerability she'd been hiding behind corporate armor. Okay, we'll find somewhere normal. They left the building together, James carrying Sarah when her legs got tired. Outside, Austin continued its ordinary afternoon, traffic and construction and people going about their lives. None of them knew they'd just witnessed the collapse of a billion-dollar company. None of them cared. James drove to a diner he remembered from his firefighting days, the kind of place that served breakfast all day and didn't ask questions. They slid into a booth, Sarah between the adults, and ordered without looking at menus. Pancakes for Sarah, burger and fries for James, soup and salad for Catherine. I should be at Wade Energy, dealing with the fallout. Catherine stirred her soup without eating it. You should be eating. Can't deal with anything on an empty stomach. Is that firefighter wisdom? Common sense wisdom. You've been living on fear and stubbornness for 3 days. Your body needs fuel. She took a bite, chewed mechanically. Everything I built is gone. The company, my career, my reputation. Once the media gets hold of this, I'll be the CEO who let her CFO steal billions. Doesn't matter that I stopped him. I'll be the face of the scandal. Sarah looked up from her pancakes. But you did the right thing. That matters more than what people think. Does it? I could have stayed quiet, let Richard have the company, disappeared somewhere and started over. No one would have known. You would have known, James said quietly. That's what matters. Living with yourself. And you think I can live with destroying my father's legacy? I think you honored it. Your dad built Wade Energy on honesty and hard work. Richard turned it into a crime syndicate. You brought it back to what it was supposed to be, even if that meant burning down what it became. That takes more courage than protecting a lie. Catherine's eyes filled. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like failure. Then you're feeling wrong. Sarah said it so matter-of-factly that both adults turned to stare. What? Sarah, James started, but she kept going. You stopped the bad man, helped all the people he stole from, made sure everyone knew the truth. That's not failing, that's winning, even if it's hard. Catherine laughed through tears. When did you get so wise? Mama taught me. She said hard things and right things are usually the same thing. You just gotta choose right even when it hurts. Your mama was very smart. The smartest. Daddy says I'm like her, which means you should listen to me. Sarah grinned, gap-toothed and bright. They ate in comfortable silence after that. The diner hummed with ordinary noise, clattering plates, conversation from other booths, country music on the jukebox, normal life that continued regardless of corporate scandals or attempted murder. It was grounding, real in ways boardrooms and FBI arrests weren't. James's phone buzzed, text from Robert, saw the news, weighed energy in chaos. You three okay? He replied, we're fine, eating lunch. We'll call later. Robert, thank God. Praying for you all. Catherine watched him put the phone away. Robert's worried? Robert's always worried, comes with the pastor job. I should thank him. For hiding me. For calling Harper. I owe him everything. You don't owe anyone anything. People helped because it was right, not because they expected payment. I'm not used to that. In my world, everything's transactional. You do something for me, I owe you. You owe me, I collect. There's always a balance sheet. Maybe that's why you were lonely. Can't build relationships on debt. Catherine set down her spoon, looked at him directly. I don't want to be that person anymore. The one who calculates costs before connecting. But I don't know how to be different. Start small. Stop thinking about what you owe and start thinking about what you want. What I want? Yeah. Right now, this moment, what do you want? She looked at Sarah, then back at James. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I want this. This feeling. Like I belong somewhere. With people who see me, not the CEO or the scandal or the money, just me. Then that's what you work toward, one day at a time, one honest moment at a time. Sarah had finished her pancakes and was drawing on the paper placemat with crayons the waitress had brought. She held up her latest creation, 3 stick figures holding hands, a dog beside them, purple stars overhead. It's us, our family. Catherine's breath caught. I'm not your family, Sarah. I'm just someone your dad helped. Your family if we want you to be. Right, Daddy? James found himself nodding before he'd fully processed the question. Right. Family's not just blood, it's who shows up, who stays. And you want me to stay? Catherine's voice was so small, so uncertain. Do you want to stay? She looked at the drawing, at Sarah's hopeful face, at James's steady presence across the table. Yes, more than anything, but I don't know how. I have to rebuild a company, face lawsuits, testify in trials. It could take years. I can't ask you to wait while I clean up this mess. Didn't ask you to ask. Asked if you wanted to stay. Everything else we figure out as we go. Just like that? You trust me after 3 days? Sarah trusts you. That's all the reference I need. Catherine reached across the table, took his hand. I'm going to mess this up. I'll work too much or say the wrong thing or forget how to be human again. I'm not good at this. Neither am I. Been a single father for 4 years, still burning dinner half the time. Still forgetting to check Sarah's homework. Still figuring out how to braid hair without making her He squeezed her fingers. We'll mess up together. That's what people do. Sarah scooted out of the booth, climbed into Catherine's lap uninvited. Catherine's arms came around her automatically now, no hesitation. Are you gonna live with us? In our house? Sarah, James started, but Catherine answered before he could redirect. I don't know yet, sweetie. I have to figure out where I'm going to live first. My apartment's not safe. Richard might have people watching it. Then you should stay with us. We have a guest room. It's not fancy, but it's safe. And Daddy makes really good pancakes for breakfast. Catherine looked at James over Sarah's head. I couldn't impose. It's not imposing if we're asking. Sarah's right. Guest room's there. You need somewhere safe while this investigation plays out. Might as well be somewhere with good pancakes. James, you barely know me. Know enough. You're honest, you're brave, you love my daughter, that's the important stuff. Catherine's tears fell freely now, but she was smiling. Okay. Yes. I'll stay. Until I figure out what's next. Good. Sarah hugged her tighter. Now you're really part of the family. They finished lunch and drove back to hill country as the sun angled toward evening. Sarah fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted by the day's drama. James kept the radio low, letting silence fill the spaces between songs. Catherine stared out the window at passing fields and fence lines. What happens tomorrow? After today's adrenaline wears off and we're just 3 people living in a house together? Tomorrow we wake up, make breakfast, I go to work, Sarah goes to school, you figure out how to rebuild from ashes, normal life except we do it together instead of alone. And when the press finds out where I'm staying, when they camp on your lawn and turn your life into a circus, then we deal with it, same as everything else, one problem at a time. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but simple and easy aren't the same thing. They pulled into the ranch as twilight painted the sky purple and gold. Ranger barked from the porch, tail wagging at familiar sounds. James carried Sarah inside, laid her on the couch without waking her. Catherine stood in the doorway, taking in the small cabin with its worn furniture and child's drawings and photos of a woman she'd never meet, but whose presence filled every corner. This is home, James said quietly. Not fancy, not big, but it's ours. Yours too, if you want it. Catherine walked to the mantel, studied Emily's photo. She was beautiful. Inside and out, best person I ever knew. Do you think she'd mind, me being here? Emily believed in second chances, in love after loss. She made me promise before she died that I'd let myself be happy again. Took me 4 years to figure out what that meant. He moved to stand beside Catherine. I think she'd like you. Think she'd be glad Sarah has someone else who sees how special she is. I'm not trying to replace her. I know. Can't replace someone who was one of a kind. But you can honor what they taught you by living the way they'd want. Emily wanted me to be happy. Wanted Sarah to grow up surrounded by people who loved her. If you're part of that, I think she'd be pleased. Catherine touched the photo frame gently. I'll try to be worthy of that. You already are, just by being honest, by choosing truth over comfort. That's all Emily ever asked of anyone. Sarah stirred on the couch, opened her eyes halfway. Daddy? We home? Yeah, baby girl, we're home. Is Miss Catherine staying? She is. Good. I like her here. Makes the house feel less sad. Sarah closed her eyes again, drifted back to sleep. James made dinner while Catherine unpacked the overnight bag he'd grabbed from his truck. Spare clothes, toiletries, the basics of starting over. They ate together at the kitchen table, Sarah between them, the 3 of them falling into a rhythm that felt practiced despite being hours old. After dinner, Sarah wanted to show Catherine her room, her drawings, her collection of rocks from the creek. Catherine followed her patiently, asking questions, genuinely interested in a 7-year-old's treasures. James cleaned up, listening to their voices drift from down the hall. His phone rang. Robert, you're all over the news. Wade Energy CEO returns from the dead. Exposes massive fraud scheme. Very dramatic. Not planning it that way. I know, but the media loves a resurrection story. How's Catherine holding up? Better than expected. She's strong, stronger than she thinks. And you? How are you handling having a house guest? It's good, feels right. Sarah's happier than I've seen her in months. Robert was quiet for a moment. James, I'm glad. You deserve this. Deserve to move forward. Emily would be proud. Hope so. Still feels strange sometimes, like I'm betraying her memory. Loving someone new doesn't erase loving someone who's gone. Emily knew that. She gave you permission to live. Take it. After they hung up, James found Catherine and Sarah in the guest room. His daughter was showing Catherine how to arrange the stuffed animals on the bed. Very specific order, apparently crucial. Bunny goes here, then bear, then the elephant. It's important. They're a family, too. Catherine arranged them carefully, following Sarah's instructions exactly. When the girl was satisfied, she hugged Catherine goodnight and ran to James for her bedtime routine. Teeth brushed, pajamas on, tucked into bed with the purple quilt Emily had made. James sat beside her, ready to read, but Sarah had other plans. I like Miss Catherine being here. I can tell. Are you gonna marry her? Like you married Mama? The question landed like a punch. Sarah, we just met 3 days ago. Marriage that's way down the road, if it happens at all. But you like her, I can tell. You smile different when she's around. She's been through a lot. She needs friends right now, people she can trust. That's what we're being. Friends who live together and eat dinner and feel like family? Sarah's wisdom was relentless. Yeah, friends like that. Mama told me before heaven that you'd find someone else someday. Someone who'd make you smile again. I think it's Miss Catherine. James's throat tightened. Your mama said that? Uh-huh. She said love doesn't run out. You can love her and still love the new person. There's enough room. Sarah pointed at her chest. Heart's big enough for everyone. He kissed her forehead, unable to speak past the emotion. Sarah hugged him tight. I love you more than the sky, Daddy. More than the stars, baby girl. She was asleep before he reached the door. He stood there for a moment, watching her breathe, marveling at this small person who understood things that took most people decades to learn. Catherine was on the porch when he came out. Sitting in Emily's old rocking chair, staring at the stars, he joined her, took the chair beside hers. Sarah asleep? Out cold? Today exhausted her. Me too. Catherine pulled her knees to her chest. I keep expecting to wake up. For this to be a dream or a nightmare or anything except real. It's real. All of it. The good and the terrible. The terrible I understand. Spent my whole life navigating terrible. It's the good that confuses me. You and Sarah, this place, the feeling of being wanted instead of needed. I don't know how to trust it. So don't trust it yet. Just experience it. Let it be real without needing to understand it. She looked at him, moonlight catching in her eyes. You're very patient with me. Had a good teacher. Emily never rushed anything. Said life moved fast enough without us pushing. I would have liked her. She would have liked you too. You're both stubborn women who don't quit when things get hard. Catherine smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. Should. It's one of the highest I know. They rocked in comfortable silence, the kind shared between people who didn't need words to fill every moment. Somewhere in the distance, Ranger barked at something only he could hear. The world kept turning, stars wheeling overhead, time passing whether they wanted it to or not. James? Catherine's voice was hesitant. What Sarah said about me staying, did she mean it? Really? Sarah doesn't say things she doesn't mean. If she wants you here, she wants you here, completely, forever probably, knowing her. And you? He took a breath, chose honesty over safety. I want you here too. Not just because you need somewhere safe, because this house feels less empty with you in it, because Sarah lights up when you walk in a room, because I'm tired of being alone and you seem tired of it too. I am so tired. I didn't realize how lonely I was until I wasn't anymore. Then stay, however long you want. We'll figure out the rest as it comes. Catherine reached across the space between their chairs, found his hand. Okay, I'll stay. And James? Yeah? Thank you. For pulling me from that car, for protecting me, for letting me be part of this. I know I'm a complication you didn't ask for. Best complications never are. Emily was a complication. Showed up at a fire scene as a reporter, kept asking questions until I agreed to coffee just to make her stop. Ended up being the best decision I never planned to make. You think we're a good decision? Think we might be. Time will tell. They sat together until the cold drove them inside. James showed Catherine how the shower worked. where the extra blankets were, handed her one of his old t-shirts to sleep in. She looked smaller in his clothes, more vulnerable than the CEO who'd faced down her would-be killer in a boardroom. "Sleep well," he said at her door. "You too. And James, I meant what I said earlier, about wanting this. All of it. I'm going to mess up, but I'm going to try. That's all anyone can do, try and keep trying." He checked on Sarah one more time before bed, found her sprawled across the mattress, stuffed animals scattered despite their careful arrangement. He tucked Bunny back beside her, pulled the blanket higher. In his own room, James lay in the darkness and thought about the past 4 days. How a routine drive in the rain had turned into saving a life, harboring a fugitive, bringing down a criminal empire, and somehow gaining a family he hadn't known he was missing. Emily's photo sat on the nightstand. He picked it up, studied her smile. "I think you'd approve," he whispered to her image. "She's stubborn like you, smart like you, good with Sarah. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but it feels right. Like you said it would, when I finally let myself feel again." The photo didn't answer. Emily was 4 years gone, her voice fading in his memory no matter how hard he tried to hold on to it. But he could imagine what she'd say. Something about trusting his instincts, about choosing happiness over fear, about showing up for people who needed him because that's what good men did. He set the photo down gently, closed his eyes, and let sleep take him. Morning came with sunlight through the curtains and the smell of coffee. James woke disoriented, then remembered. Catherine was here, in his house, making coffee. He found her in the kitchen, standing at the stove in his t-shirt and her jeans from yesterday, attempting to flip pancakes. Sarah sat at the table in her pajamas, offering advice. "Gotta wait for the bubbles, Miss Catherine. Then you flip. Not before." "Right. Bubbles. I see them. Here goes." She flipped. The pancake landed perfectly. "I did it!" Sarah applauded. "You're learning. Soon you'll be as good as Daddy." Catherine looked up, saw James in the doorway, and smiled. Not the CEO smile he'd seen in photographs. A real one. Uncertain and hopeful and entirely human. "Morning. I hope you don't mind. Sarah said you usually make breakfast, but I wanted to try. They're not as good as yours, but they're perfect," he said, and meant it. They ate together, the three of them crowded around the kitchen table. Sarah chattered about her plans for the day. School, then art class after. Then she wanted to teach Catherine how to skip rocks at the creek. Catherine listened like it was the most important agenda she'd ever heard. James's phone buzzed. Text from Harper. "Press conference at 2 p.m. Wade Energy formally announcing the fraud investigation and Richard's arrest. Need Catherine there if she's willing." He showed her the message. She read it, took a breath, nodded. "I should go. Face the media, own what happened. Want us there with you? You'd do that? We're family now, right? That's what Sarah keeps saying. Family shows up." Catherine's eyes filled, but she was smiling. "Yeah, we're family, and yes, please. I'd like you there." So at 2 p.m. they stood together on the steps of Wade Energy headquarters. Catherine in a borrowed suit, James in his best shirt, Sarah in her favorite purple dress because she insisted Miss Catherine needed her lucky color. The press swarmed, cameras flashing, questions shouted over each other. Catherine stepped to the microphone, James and Sarah just behind her. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. "My name is Catherine Wade. I'm the CEO of Wade Energy, and I'm here to tell you the truth about what's been happening at my company for the past 5 years. She spoke for 10 minutes. The fraud, the arrests, the victims who'd lost their water rights. She took full responsibility for not seeing the crime sooner. Promised to make every victim whole, even if it meant liquidating her personal assets. She announced Wade Energy would declare bankruptcy, that a new company would rise from its ashes, one built on transparency and ethics. The reporters shouted questions. She answered them honestly, held nothing back. When someone asked who the man and child beside her were, she didn't hesitate. This is James Collins and his daughter Sarah. James saved my life. They both reminded me what matters. That's all you need to know. After, in the truck driving home, Sarah asked if Catherine was sad about losing her company. A little, but also relieved. I get to build something new now, something better. Like our family, Sarah said. We were sad when Mama left, but then Miss Catherine came, and now we're building something new too. James caught Catherine's eye in the rearview mirror. Saw the tears, saw the smile, saw someone learning how to be happy despite everything she'd lost. 2 years later, James stood on the same porch watching Sarah play with Ranger in the yard. She was 9 now, taller, her heart strong and healthy after the surgery that had terrified him for months. Catherine was inside on a conference call with the co-op she'd built from Wade Energy's remains. 53 ranchers now co-owning their water rights, managing resources sustainably. The front door opened. Catherine stepped out wearing a purple apron Sarah had made her for Christmas. She slid her arms around James's waist, rested her head against his shoulder. Call go okay? Perfect. The Martinez family just signed on. That's the last holdout. We're fully operational. Proud of you. Couldn't have done it without you, any of it. Sarah ran up the steps, breathless and grinning. Daddy, can we show Miss Catherine the pictures we found, the ones of Mama? James looked at Catherine. She nodded, steady and certain. They went inside together, pulled out the albums Sarah had been organizing. Photos of Emily pregnant, Emily holding baby Sarah, Emily and James on their wedding day. Catherine looked at each one, asked questions, honored the woman whose absence had made room for her presence. She was beautiful, Catherine said softly, touching a photo of Emily laughing at something off camera. She was, inside and out. James squeezed Catherine's hand. She'd like what we've built, all of us together. Think so? No so. Emily believed in second chances, in love big enough to hold everyone. She'd be happy we found each other. Sarah climbed into Catherine's lap, looked at the photos together. Mama sent you to us. I know she did. She promised Daddy would smile again, and now he does, all the time. Catherine kissed the top of Sarah's head, blinked back tears. Then I owe your mama everything, for sending me to people who taught me how to be human again. You were always human, James said quietly. You just forgot for a while. We helped you remember. Outside, the sun set over hill country, painting the sky in shades of purple Emily would have loved. Inside, 3 people who'd found each other in crisis built a life in peace. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real, honest, earned through courage and choice and the simple act of showing up. Sarah's drawing hung framed above the mantel now, 3 figures holding hands beneath purple stars, Emily's photo beside it. Past and present, loss and love, all existing together in the space between grief and joy. Catherine had stopped calculating costs. James had stopped hesitating. Sarah had gained the family she'd always known they'd need. Some people saved lives with water. Some saved souls with grace. This family had done both.